All right. Well, welcome back to another Wisconsin AFS Wednesday webinar. And this week is going to be kind of cool. This is Jordan Weeks is going to be presenting on video editing. And I think this is a really cool example of one of our members who has a passion and a talent and is willing to share that with folks. And it could be really interesting to see, what people will do with this new skill set. So, Jordan, take it away.
All right, thanks, Max. Thanks everybody for showing up. Really appreciate it. This Max is right. This is something that I really enjoy doing. It's something I do for fun. And for the record, all of this is pretty much self-taught. So I am knowledgeable about a lot of this stuff, but I am far from an expert on it. There's so much to learn about outdoor videography and video editing. Fortunately, these times we have this cool thing called YouTube, and you can learn all kinds of information about these topics on YouTube. So without further ado, I'll start through my presentation. So I'm just going to start out talking a little bit about like my filming and editing history, how I got started and how you can get started. Talk a little bit about maybe what camera might work well for you. Then talk about some camera angles and some accessories for cameras, and then some things to think about before you start recording video. Some of you may be like some other people that I know that got a GoPro at one time in their life for a gift, or got some kind of action camera and they used it once and then it went in a drawer. I'm gonna hopefully try to help you get that thing out of the drawer and use it to make some pretty cool videos. I'm gonna talk a little bit about some important camera modes and settings, and then file storage is as important as actually getting the video. And then at the end, I'm going to actually open up my editing program, the one that I use, and show you how I would do just some basic things in that program and kind of get you started on how that kind of looks and goes. So I started out kind of with interest in this field back in about 2001 when I was living up by Gilbert and actually working for Steve. I met Steve Heiting and I started fishing with him, and I actually became his videographer for his videos that you see listed on this slide from about 2001 to 2010. And that was many hours in the boat filming various musky catches and talking points and things like that. What we didn't do in that venture was any of the video editing. At that time, all the editing programs were really expensive and mostly were done by professionals. But now you can create a professional looking product with consumer grade editing software that's relatively inexpensive. So at that time, the cameras were very large and super expensive. Most of my cameras are very inexpensive, and I can capture excellent video with them. Most of the cameras that back in the day were standard definition. Now everything's 4K. You can hardly find cameras that aren't 4K now. They didn't have very many advanced features. When I'm talking about advanced features, I'm talking about pre-record, looping features, and battery saving. And the batteries really sucked. You burn through them really fast. So I assume since you're listening to me right now, you're interested a little bit in getting some video, whether it's for personal use or for work. There's 1,000 different cameras that you can use. I have some of my personal favorites, but in my opinion, there is not one single camera that's going to be really great for everything that you want to do. Specifically, for purposes of this talk, I'm going to talk about cameras that are good for hunting and or fishing. So the first one listed there is a GoPro. I personally use the GoPro Hero 3s, mostly because actually there's two reasons. The first one is I can get them very cheap on eBay right now. They're an older model camera, but they do have 1080, 1080p and 60 frames per second, which is classically a standard or high definition recording. They're really great for fishing. They're also really great in really bright conditions. They do lack some definition when it gets dark or really cloudy. So they don't work very well for hunting for me, because most of the shots I get are from a blind or from a tree stand or in the evening or in the early morning. And those conditions tend to be darker. And as soon as it starts to get dark, those GoPro pictures, they lose their resolution and they look really grainy. That's where you move on to the bullet down there that says Handycam. That's the picture on the lower right. That's my actual Sony HD Handycam that I use. I actually have 4 of those cameras. I've gotten them on eBay now periodically for about $100 a piece. They retailed for somewhere between $400 and $500 when they were brand new. But they have a really cool feature called low lux, and that allows the camera aperture to open up and capture some of that really low light footage. It's really, really good for hunting because it captures that low light footage and you can zoom. So the drawback of the GoPro for hunting situations, it's such a wide angle lens, everything in the picture looks really far away. So you could have a deer or whatever at 15 yards, but it would still look like it's at 30 with a GoPro, versus that Handycam that I put on just a camera arm that I screw into the tree. I can get that thing zoomed right in, so you get a really close look at that animal. There's a commercial hunting camera. I guess you could use it for anything, that Tacticam. Some of you know I have a part-time job at an archery shop. They sell the Tacticam there. The salesman comes in all the time. I'm not a huge fan of Tacticam. They're really nice, easy to use camera. They're waterproof, high definition, but for what they, in my opinion, for what they advertise it for, it doesn't work very well. It doesn't have a good head cam mount, so it's very difficult to get a Tacticam on your head and make it comfortable for viewing in those kind of angles. The other part about Tacticam that I don't like, it was actually designed for like putting on your bow or your gun. And as soon as you do that and you pull the trigger on that weapon, it shakes and you lose the you lose the projectile. So if it's an arrow, when you release your arrow, it shakes and you can't see where that arrow enters the animal. Versus the Handycam that I use, it sits sideways. It sits apart from my bow, so any movement of my bow isn't captured on the camera. You just get a clean picture. So for hunting, I use the Handycam, and I also use it for fishing, and all the other fishing applications are the GoPro. I like GoPros the most because they're really, really tough. However, there are a bunch of other action cameras. I don't have any examples because I've never bought or purchased or used any of those other action cameras. But if you're going to use those, make sure you get at least 720p. 1080 is better. I think it probably would be hard to find one that is not 720p or greater. And the other thing to look at is make sure the frame rate is 60 if you plan on doing any type of slow motion. The loop feature is a mandatory feature. If my Handycam had a loop feature on it, I would only use those because they capture great audio. They can zoom. The picture is great in the light and in the dark, but they don't loop. GoPro 3 Plus or 3s and 3 Pluses, they all loop. So anything with a higher number than 3 is going to have the loop feature. The original GoPro Hero and the GoPro 2s do not have the loop feature. So I'll talk a little bit more about the loop feature as we get into this a little bit more. So where do you get it? I buy almost all my cameras from either eBay, B&H Photo, or Amazon. And the grand majority of them have come from eBay. You just obviously buyer beware on eBay, but I have not had any real issues buying GoPros. I have 7 GoPro Hero 3 Pluses that I have just because I bought them between $50 and $70 each. Having all the same camera is nice because then you have only one set of batteries. They all match. One set of chargers, one set of cords, et cetera, et cetera. So this is where I would suggest. B&H is great because it's a professional photography store. They'll actually answer questions that you might have about any of their products or any other products. So it's a great place to go to ask questions and get answers. They're not super fast with the answers, but you'll get them in about a week or so. And then obviously, what can't you buy on Amazon, right? So there's an unlimited number of things that you can get to go on a GoPro. There's GoPro brand, and then there's 1,000 different off brands that connect to GoPro devices. I'm just going to go through some of the critical ones that you need to have if you plan on doing any sort of filming. In the upper right-hand corner of the slide, you'll see the small GoPro batteries. If you look at it closely, you'll notice that they don't all say GoPro on them. Some of them say K-Star, and I want to say some say something about Wasabi, or I don't know, some other Wasabi Power, I want to say. But you can get those batteries on eBay for really cheap, $10 for a pair and a charger. You get 2 batteries and a charger. Just below that are battery packs. And when we get into the question and answer part, I can talk a little bit about those. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about those battery packs or those charging packs at the end of this slide too. But those are really good. You can plug those into a camera, into a GoPro, into a Hero 3 with a cord, and you don't even need to have a battery in it. It'll power it all day long with one of those external battery packs. So you don't have to worry about switching batteries out. I still have the small GoPro batteries for my head cam, which I'll talk about a little bit later. In the middle of the screen, on the top, are just some other various items that I actually, some of I've created, some of them are commercial. There's a polarizing lens, there's a LCD screen that pops on the back, there's a skeleton frame, and then in the upper kind of middle of that, there's like a black flap. I'll show you that when we get the video going too. That's actually my rain guard for my GoPro Heroes that I use instead of the waterproof case, which is shown there on the screen as well. The case in the middle on the bottom is my SD card case. I have extra SD cards for every one of my cameras. Although if you use the looping feature and have cards that are 32 gigs or larger, you don't really need to have too many extras, because you can film, as long as you can take the files off that you have a computer at the end of the day, you can take files off that don't have anything good on. You can make it a whole week on a fishing trip for a week with a 32 gig card. The second large bullet down there, a bag of rice is critical because inevitably you're going to be in damp conditions at some point. Throwing your cameras in a bag of rice overnight will save them. I've dumped several GoPros underwater without the protective case on them and saved them all with rice. So that's a very valuable thing to have when you're going to be filming in the outdoors. The other thing that I want to mention is you want to tether every camera unless it's fastened securely to something solid. I had a suction cup mount that ended up in the bottom of Lake of the Woods because I couldn't pull that suction cup off. But as soon as we started jiggling around the waves, that thing fell down in the water and to be gone forever. So tether everything that isn't attached securely. Going back to that battery pack, the important thing for GoPro Heroes is the voltage input if you're going to try to use one of these external battery packs. When I was looking into this, a couple of my friends told me, hey, you got to get these packs. They'll help power the camera all day. But when you started looking into it more, I called GoPro and found out, I was asking questions about the voltage going in and the amperage going in. What GoPro told me is the design is for a 1 amp, circled right there in red, a 1 amp input. You'll see it says 5 volts / 1 amp and 5 volts / 1.8 amps. I only use the output that has the 1 amp coming out of it. The folks at GoPro told me that if you run higher amperage, you can burn your camera up. So you have to look for the battery packs with a 1 amp output, and it's actually kind of hard to find those these days because the higher the amp output, the quicker they would charge a phone or something like that. And that's what these battery packs are mostly used for. So it's actually, when you're looking for these battery packs in particular, you want to look for the 1 amp output. Sound is probably the trickiest part of filming. I don't do a whole lot other than get the sound off my Sony Handycam. The Sony Handycam has really good audio pickup. It's exceptional. And I would say the GoPro has very terrible audio pickup. Unless you get some sort of external microphone, as you see on the left-hand side of the screen there, with some dead cat on it, the GoPro Hero is almost worthless when it comes to sound. The only GoPro I get any good sound out of is the one that's on my head, because my voice is as loud as Gilbert's and 86 decibels. The other GoPros, basically you hear wind noise and a lot of other stuff, but the sound quality is horrible. On the far right there, that's like a lapel mic. The drawback to those is you need to have, most of the time, you need to have some sort of recording device for that to go on. They can get really expensive, and the more stuff you hook onto your body or are involved in the filming, the more difficult it becomes. And that picture of the Sony Handicap in the middle, you can probably see on the very right, bottom right of that lens, you can see the little pores there where the, I wonder if you, can you see my pointer? Hopefully you can see my pointer. It's right on the little pores there. I actually took a piece of sticky Velcro, it's the soft side of the Velcro, and cut it to go over that. That's the microphone pickup. That little bit of Velcro, that's my Velcro wind stopper. It's my cheap dead cat is what they call it. Sticks on there, and it actually stops the wind noise pretty well from whistling through that camera if it's too windy. But I don't do a whole lot with sound. The other part about sound is inevitably when you're in the boat, you're going to have a conversation or in the woods or something that you probably don't want to have on video. So keep that in mind too. Everything that you say during the course of recording is captured. And so it's unfortunate when you're saying something that you don't want everybody else to hear and you catch a fish or kill an animal on video. So it's just a word to the wise. Sound, in my opinion, I don't use a lot because of those reasons. That, and I'm usually yelling at my dad for something. The head mount is my all-time favorite mount. A lot of people don't like stuff on their head when they're fishing, and hey, that's fine. But it does get the best video footage, especially when it comes to action shots. It's not great all the time, especially on my head, because when I notice when I'm fishing, I move my head around a lot. Depth finder, water, trees, sky, water, feet, depth finder. So you get pretty sick watching the video like that. But I'll get into how I combat that issue in a second. The head mount, the tricky part about the head mount is that it has to be the right angle. If you have it too high, you won't see anything but the sky, and if you have it too low, you won't see any of the action. So what I do on all mine is I have a buddy help look from the side to see where the camera is pointing, and then I actually, on the far right here, you'll see this gold line. It goes all the way across that mount, so I know exactly where to put that when I have it on my hat. You may be able to see just underneath there, there's another scratch. I scratched that with a jackknife, and that's where I put it if I have a stocking hat on. So the view is different when you have different sort of hats on, but the footage that you get from your head mount is going to be the best stuff to work with. So keep that in mind. I very rarely use these full capture waterproof lens covers or camera covers because they're clunky. They make it hard to change batteries, which is a little bit clunky too with the head camera. I have to use the small batteries. I guess I don't have to, but I choose to because I don't want to have that extra battery pack and a wire hanging down my back. So I use the regular GoPro batteries for these, and I just keep changing them out. If you start and stop your camera a lot, it eats your battery a little faster. But if you don't, you can usually get about an hour and a half of constant filming on one GoPro battery. So I got probably 30 or 40 of those small batteries that I cycle through in my adventures. The reason I don't like the full waterproof case for my head is, first of all, you get no sound. It sounds like you're in a bucket, have your head in a bucket. The second part is that extra lens on the outside does interfere sometimes with light and can give you a glare. So I'll show you a little tip on how to do that too. You can actually remove all the screws if you need to have that waterproof case and you're not going to actually stick it underwater. You can remove that lens cover right here by taking out these little screws around, and then it comes right off and you get a clear picture while having the protection of that hard case. So that's a little extra tip there. There's other standard mounts on the market. Some of you may have heard of YOLOtech. The pictures on the right are all from YOLOtech mounts, but I want you to pay attention to those. Is it the angler, especially in the bottom picture, look how far away he is. And imagine throwing out there with some sort of plastic worm and catching a bass. What are you going to see? You're not going to see anything just from a YOLOtech. The best part about a YOLOtech is that it's powered through your boat batteries. So that sticks in your running light socket, and then plugs into your GoPro and powers it that way, which is great. You never have to change the battery. It can run all day. But in my opinion, the picture you get is pretty much garbage. You're so far away from the subject matter, it doesn't really give you good opportunities to not only edit the video, but to see what's going on. I mentioned suction cup mounts before. I use a number of different clamps, especially when I go into other people's boats. My boats are all set up with permanent filming stuff in it, filming mounts in it. But when I go fish with someone else, I want to film then too. And I have a number of clamps that I usually can put on their boat somewhere or on the windshield, on various parts of the boat to get decent camera angles. Some people like to put the permanent sticky mounts on an outboard motor. I've seen that work pretty well, especially for like a starboard or a port side filming. That would be okay. And again, with a suction cup mount, make sure you tether that bad boy because it's going to end up in the drink. This is an example of what you get when you use my boom camera, which is my HD Handycam, versus what you saw before with those YOLOtech. This is from my HD Handycam that sits on a boom, and I'll show you where I place that in a minute. This is my homemade boom. So most of the best mounts that are out there are homemade. There aren't really any commercial vendors that make a mounting system that would work very well for a boat for this type of filming. I'm going to go through the parts that I use to make this boom. It's, I don't know, I guess I'd say it's moderately expensive. It's probably what you would expect to pay if there was a commercial one. But I have not found one in any commercial vendor that's worth a crap. So it starts out with like a $10 Menards painter's pole. This one is 3 to 6 feet in length. That's the distance that it'll expand to, 6 feet. The reason I do that is twofold. First of all, if you put your cameras up above about 6 feet, it's going to look like you're on the moon taking a video, and you get really skewed editing out of that. So I usually film my boom height at about 5 feet, about my chin. I'm 5'10", so I put it at about my chin, about 5.5 feet, and it gets the best view of the front of the boat at an angle that really looks good. So the 3 to 6 really works well. If you go with a longer painter's pole and you don't extend it all the way, the pole that's still down in the bottom part of that sticks down inside the bottom part of the pole will bang around in there and make all kinds of noise, and your filming will be just, your audio will be completely trash. So that's why I get the shorter pole. It avoids that, and it's all tight when you get it up and set. So $10. The next part is a actual, you can see it in the lower right-hand corner of this slide. This is a Clicksnap.net painter's pole camera mount. So that's something that you can go onto eBay and search for, or Amazon, and it actually has the threads that are identical to what's on the end of a painter's pole. And then on the very top, it's the 1/4-inch threads that are for standard camera tripods and whatnot. So that's about $20, depending on where you get it. But in my mind, it's essential for putting the top 6-way camera mount on there, which is the next item. That's a 6-way panning head for a camera mount, and you can spend between $20 and however much money you want to spend on one of those things. This one is about $25. And then on top of that 6-way pan head, and this is again where I put my Handycam, is the picture in the upper right-hand corner of this slide. That's a SEMA quick release. I buy these SEMA quick releases in like 10 packs, and I put them on everything. So that all my cameras have the same bottom piece and all my receptacles are the same. So I can put camera from mount to mount to mount to mount, no matter where I want to put it. The next part are these are GoPro bicycle handlebar mounts. These are about $3 or $4 on eBay. The picture's not great, but if you search for GoPro bicycle, I'm not talking about motorcycle, I'm talking about bicycle handle mounts, you'll see them. They're just a clamp, and this is where I mount either 1 or 2 GoPros depending on what type of filming I want to do. This is my cup holder, and no, Steve, it's not for beer. This is actually where I set those extra battery packs. I can fit 3 battery packs, up to 3 battery packs in that cup holder, and then run the wires up to my cameras. It's nice having them in there. They're secure. They aren't laying around the floor, and it holds them really well. And then I attach mine. This is my personal boat. I attach that directly hard to the boat itself. So I have that all stainless steel hardware with ram mounts that go in there. So altogether, this whole system cost me somewhere in the neighborhood of about $100 when I put it all together. I have another identical pole that I built for my dad's boat. He has a fiberglass Ranger, and instead of the hard ram where I screw it into the boat, I actually have double suction cup mounts that mount right to the side inside of his Ranger. And I was a little skeptical about those suction cup mounts, so I tethered that thing for the last 5 years, and I've never had those mounts let loose off of that fiberglass. So I can move that around his boat. Anywhere there's fiberglass, I can suction cup that thing on and have any angle I want. Go through big waves with it, and it handles it really well. So it's a homemade thing. All this stuff's available pretty easily. You just search for what you need on the internet. I'm sure you're all good at doing that. This one, again, like I said, all the best mounts are homemade. This is my homemade Gunnel Mount. I'll explain in a little bit of detail where that goes and how that works as we go along here. But essentially, it starts on the lower left with the rod holder base. That's a Scotty rod holder. It slides into the rod holder. Then I have a 1-inch aluminum tube with my tether, a ram mount, an 18-inch ram arm, another ram mount, and then the camera ram mount with a 1-inch. These are all 1-inch. These are small ram mounts. This Gunnel Mount gets some really cool video. I started doing this 2 years ago, and it gives you some of the most epic still shots and video that I've captured so far. So it's a really nice addition. It goes into any rod holder and can extend in a number of different directions. Moving on to camera angles and the way I set up the boats that I fish in. Now, obviously, not everybody's going to have 6 or 8 GoPros and 4 or 5 handy cams, but I would say if you need to go and you have one camera, you're only going to use one, you want to put that on your head. I would say if you have 2 cameras or you want to use 2 cameras, you go with a head cam, which is in the bow of the boat, number 1, and then you put some kind of stationary cam on a boom or on a clamp that's set just behind the driver's seat in a console boat, or about 1/3 of the way from the back of a tiller boat on whatever side you don't fish off of. I almost always fish off the left side of the boat, and so that's why I showed the setup this way. Camera number 1 is a head cam, a GoPro. Camera number 2 is my handy cam, picks up all the audio. It's centrally located, and it also picks up all the hook sets from me in the front with a head cam. Number 3 films any other angler in the boat. If you had another angler fishing out of the back or 2 anglers in the rear 2/3 of the boat, it would capture all their action. That's set on a medium or a wide angle, and that's typically a GoPro. And then my Gunnel cam hangs off the left rear corner of the boat and points towards the front. I'll show you some examples of what these shots look like going forward. Just a couple more illustrations of how I set the cameras up based on what I'm doing. So the first one was my casting setup. On the left here is my jigging setup. When I jig, you could jig for walleyes. In this instance, I don't fish walleyes, so I'm jigging for muskies, but I still keep my head cam in the front. I take my HD cam and put it on the back right corner. I have a GoPro to the left, and then my Gunnel cam on the left looking towards the front of the boat. It gets just about every shot you'd want in a jigging situation. And then on the right is my trolling setup. you can get away with fewer cameras because essentially all the action is behind the boat. HD camera is number 2, GoPro number 3, and my head cam number 1 that gets all the fighting of the fish after it's hooked. So here's a good example of the kind of shot you'd get from a hat camera. You wouldn't get this from some sort of chest camera. I'll show you, I'll talk about the chest camera at the end. But you get some really great shots of fish coming towards the net from this particular gear. Here's another great one. And then moving to the HD boom camera, I used this picture before, but you get to see every hook set, you get good audio, and you get really good framing of the shot in this HD camera setup. Going back to the GoPro that's on the back of the boat, this would be the wide angle GoPro. You get shots like this. It captures the back angler and then most of the action up to the front camera coverage. Here's another one. Actually, it's the same picture as you saw on my head cam from before. So I captured them at the same time, just 2 different cameras. Here's those cool Gunnel pictures. It's my wife grabbing a big giant one out of the net. You get pictures like this. And then if you want to look on this one, it's one of my favorite. You can actually see the mouth of the muskie on top of my grandma right here. It's actually coming out, the mouth is coming out of the water. And here's a series of shots from the Gunnel cam. There's the next shot, and then here's the fish taking off. You always will get some of these. These are also the fun ones you get that you might not want to show to everybody, although I'm showing it all to you guys. So I talked a little bit about a chest mount. The chest mount by far is the most comfortable GoPro mount out there. Except you get to see everyone's hands the whole time. And you hardly ever get to see anything but a bent fishing rod. So I don't ever use a chest camera, and I get really angry when I see people using chest cameras because it doesn't let me see what's going on. All it gets to show you is someone's hands. So unless you're a hand model, my advice is to stay away from chest mounts. However, I guess if you were hiking or something and want to take video of that, obviously that would be good for that because you wouldn't have your hands in the way when you're hiking. On to actual camera settings. These are some of my cameras. I just took some shots here of what the settings that I use when I'm filming. Obviously, little wrench gets to the settings. Then the middle picture shows the resolution, 1080p, and then it shows 60. That's the frames per second. I have this camera that you see here. It says hat on it. That's the middle cam. I have that set to narrow, because the hat camera, you want to have a more focused beam. And the other nice feature of the GoPro Hero 3 and up is that you can adjust the narrow, medium, and wide action or the view of the lens. So narrow is the best setting for a head camera. It captures the best video. It's also good if you wanted to put a secondary polarizing lens on or any other secondary lenses. You have to have narrow, otherwise you'll see that lens cone in the frame. Moving to the shot on the right, just showing the setting that you put it in. You go to from the left to right on the screen. That's the progression going through the menu. So resolution at 1080. Moving on to the frames per second, I arrow down 60 frames per second. 30 frames per second is okay for slow motion, but if you take a clip that's very short and try to slow it down too much, it does get choppy. That's why I recommend using the 60 frames per second every time that you have the opportunity to do so. You want to put your camera on those higher settings. It just allows for more smooth slow motion if you choose to use it. And slow motion is some of the coolest video out there. So again, talking a little bit about resolution. Here's the menu. It says wide, medium, narrow. Almost all my cameras are either on narrow or medium. The wide angle is really incredible. You get a huge field of view. I only use that on the camera that faces the side of the boat, camera number 3, on occasion. Most of the time, that one's even set on medium, because what happens if you have action at the periphery of that wide angle shot, it really looks strange because the camera lens is curving at that point. and you can really get some jacked up images if you have the action over there. They're basically unusable. So you might as well put your camera on a setting that's going to be usable, which would be narrow or medium. Looping is the best feature and the most important feature on any of your cameras. If you will hear nothing else in this whole entire presentation and you're using a GoPro, figure out how to get that thing to loop. So essentially what happens in the looping feature is the GoPro creates a number of files, and after a certain number of files, it goes back and overwrites those files. So you're not continually filling up your memory card with files of nothing. That tends to happen with musky fishermen especially, but in any outdoor pursuit, there's going to typically be many hours or at least a lot of minutes of nothing, and then intense seconds oftentimes of really intense action. And really what we're interested in is the intense action, what occurred just before it and what occurs just after it. The looping feature allows you to do that really easily. So I set all my cameras on a 20-minute loop. The 20-minute loop gives you 4 5-minute files. There's an option for a 5-minute loop, which gives you 1-minute files. So it'll film for a minute, film for a minute, film for a minute, and once it gets to the 5th file, it overwrites the first one and starts going. If you stop the camera during that time, it saves them all. So that's the benefit of this. So say you're fishing all day and you fish for 3 hours, nothing happens. You finally catch a fish. When you get done catching that fish, you hit the button that saves the previous 4 files so that you have all the action before that. You start the camera again, you get the next action. So it gives you small chunks of video that you can move easily, you can copy easily, you can even send over the internet easily. If you were to have the looping feature disabled and film for 3 hours, your file is going to be so large you're not going to be able to do anything with it. So it's very important that you use the loop feature. If you're doing something like bass fishing or walleye fishing or something with a little more action, pan fishing, the 1-minute loops are great. I use the 5-minute loops because generally from start to finish, I can get a musky capture, measure, and release within that 5-minute loop. 1 file typically. It may be 2 files, 3 files at the most. So generally that works out best for me when I'm musky fishing, but other species you'd want to do it shorter, I think. Again, this is just the screens that you'd see. Setting that on the top, you see 5 minutes, 20 minutes. I don't know who the heck would do a 60-minute loop unless you were trying to do some sort of time lapse, and then 120 minutes. I've never even thought about using that. Don't even know what I would use it for. So file management is also super important. I mentioned the loops, the 5-minute clips. They're about 780 to 800 megabytes. So they're under a gig. You can move them using a site that I like to use often. It's a free transfer site on the internet. If you go to Google, you can just type in WeTransfer, and there's a free option that you can send up to 2 gigabyte files to anybody you want that has an email address. So you throw in their email address. If you want to show somebody your footage, you put that file in there. You can put 3 of these files typically in there to get to send for free through the interwebs. When you do get footage that you want to keep, descriptive file names, once you take it off the camera and put it onto a computer, is really important. If you leave the numbers that GoPro uses on their files, you'll end up overwriting files you probably want to keep. So the first thing that I do when I remove files off my memory card is I put a descriptive file name on it. It's who caught what, where, and then the time on the clip that the action occurs. So an example would be Jordan, 30, musky, Lake of the Woods, 4 minutes. And that tells me that I caught a muskie in Lake of the Woods, and it was at 4 minutes of the 5-minute clip. That's really important as you move forward. The other really important part of files is that you don't wait too long to deal with the files that are on the camera. Unless you have like a really great memory. I don't have a great memory, so I need to take files off cameras at a really frequent basis. Essentially, after every adventure, I have to take those files off and put them on a computer, name them, and store them. I organize my folders a couple different ways. Obviously, you can do it whatever way works for you. I have folders for every year, and then by technique, fishing and hunting. I have them by location most often, and then by critter, depending on how much footage and what footage I get. It's also obviously, I'm not telling anybody anything, but back everything up. You'll want to edit off files that are on the hard drive of your computer, but you obviously want to back them up on something that isn't your computer. So obviously those external solid state hard drives are where it's at. But like I said, you want the files that you're going to edit on your computer because it'll go a lot smoother. Which software to use? There's a whole bunch of different software out there. I'm not even sure how I settled on what I currently use, which is that Pinnacle Studio, that one on the left. I use Pinnacle Studio Pro 18 right now, but it seems like every year they come out with a new version that just adds a few more features. I got the 22 as well, but I haven't started using it because it's just enough different from 18 that I have to learn how to use it. So I'm sticking with my 18 right now. Generally, to purchase it and download it online, it's somewhere around $100. There are cheaper versions. As you can see, the two in the middle, I don't have any experience with them. They look very similar to what Pinnacle looks like. I'm sure they work just fine. There are also ones that you can purchase per month. One of the really fancy ones is Adobe, but I think you need to purchase that on a month-by-month basis. And it gets pretty expensive unless you're going to be making some money off your videos. It may not be what you're looking for. My impression of free editing software is that it sucks. You don't get the features, you don't get the education, you don't get the YouTube tutorials that you get for some of this other commercial stuff. But Pinnacle Studio is where it's at for me. It's relatively easy to use, and you can find out pretty much anything you want to do on it from a couple different places on YouTube. What can you produce? So why would you even want to do this, right? From your video, you can get great screenshots. You can make awesome presentations, slideshows, DVDs. You can just create movie files. You can do, things for Facebook, things for Instagram, YouTube. You can actually make movies with directories, and just like you'd have when a CD you get from the video store or whatever, or a DVD from the video store, you can make it look exactly like that. I use it mostly for YouTube content, and I make an annual fishing and hunting movie every year, just for posterity, I guess. Talked a little bit about the one-time payment, which is what I did for Pinnacle, or monthly subscriptions. Talked a little bit already about the YouTube tutorial. The guy I like to listen to for that is Pinnacle Studio Pro. He really breaks it down in a way that I can understand. So let's talk about editing. I'm going to jump out of this PowerPoint and I'm going to jump into my editing program. Maybe I should take maybe I won't take a question till the end. How about that, Max? Questions at the end. I'll jump into the editing program and edit a little bit of video. And maybe if we have some specific questions about that, I could jump back into it a little bit later. So here, I assume you guys can still see my screen. If that's not true, somebody send some kind of smoke signal or call me or something.
Looks just good. Looks fine, Jordan.
Okay, thanks, Max. All right, so this is the editing screen of Pinnacle Studio Pro. All the files that are in here, I've already imported, which is this button up here. If you click the import button, it goes to your directory it's just like your Windows Explorer. You can pick specific folders to import and specific files to import. But like I said, editing off of files that are already on your computer is essential. You can link to other drives that you see here, but the speed at which you can edit coming off another drive is a lot slower than if it's on your own computer. So The other thing that I'll mention is the computer that I edit on is nothing fancy. Honestly, it's about, I think it was a $700. It's a Toshiba laptop with a graphics card and an i7 processor. I wanted a fast processor for the rendering portion of the files. But other than that, it's probably 5 years old, and I could still edit it. The program can still keep up with me as I edit. So Gilbert actually sent me a pretty cool video. So what I did is I put some example files. Let's see here. There we go. I have a file that says AFS vids. These are the ones that I was going to deal with here. So Gilbert sent me this file right here. And all you do is I took that file from its directory, which is up here. It's the view pane. I can play it if I want to. Shows what's going to go on the video over here. I just moved it down into my editing panel. Okay. And you can see that there's different rows. There's different layers to the editing, right? And the layers actually correspond with how you're going to see various aspects. So as you can see, I put it in the second one. I'm actually going to move it down one level. On the top here, you can see this is the file being rendered. So this is the computer getting this file ready to deal with. Excuse me. In terms of editing the actual file. So as you can see, this particular clip is about 2 minutes and 30 some seconds long, which is shown on the timeline here. You can scroll over to the end of the clip. That's the length of the clip, right? So if this was a video I was going to put on my YouTube channel, I'd go to my logos and let's just throw, just because St. Croix's here, let's just throw St. Croix up there. And then, so as you can see, St. Croix falls over the current video, which is kind of neat. But what if I wanted to say that it was Crazy Steve Gilbert's fishing video? So there's just a title editor. I hit the title button. It throws a title in there and goes right to editing a title. So then I would just type in Crazy Steve's Bass, right? It's just like any other editing program. You can take that box and move it all over the place. You can change the font. I like this one. You can change the size. You can actually, this is actually better for Crazy Steve. We'll go down to this one here. It's basically the same stuff as you get in any editing program. So let's just say we're going to put it down here. We wanted to make that more transparent. You can do that. That's opacity. Drop down the menu. I can make it more opaque. Let's just say with that, we wanted to have it go right here and we wanted it to move. So let's have it move. So here on top, I have looks. These are all different looks you can go through. There's 100 different ones. We'll go through and put a motion on. You can make it enter a certain way, leave a certain way. We can make it grow. So for example, I put a motion that thing, it's a movie trailer. It's going to come towards you. As you play it, it gets larger. Obviously, you can hear the audio in the background. Let's just call that good for the time being. You can set the standard duration of each one of these. If I wanted it longer, I just drag it. If I wanted to lay the St. Croix over Crazy Steve's, I go like this. Now, when you click there, it shows you everything. Now, you can see that the St. Croix logo is a little bit covering the title, which is the most important part. I would double click on that frame. I learned all this stuff on the internet. I'm not going to explain why this is. This is just what we would do if I wanted to move that or change it in any sort of way. So I can make it larger if I want. Let's go really big. No, it's not. It's too big. Let's go smaller. All right. So that if we wanted to keep it there, I can move it all over the place. I can rotate it. I can mirror it. I can make it more transparent. You can see through it. And as we would go, it's also going to render all these files as we go. So the way I typically edit is I start from the beginning. The thing that really drives me through most of my editing is the actual music. Now, if I'd have known Frank was on here, I probably would have got him to send me some music to put on here. But I didn't know that, so sorry, Frank. I'll just put some music in. So the thing you need to be careful about when you're talking about music and a YouTube application is copyright infringement. YouTube doesn't like it when you use popular music. So I purchased some separate music from a place called Premium Beats. You can purchase a whole bunch of different music from that venue. You can go through and search for different genres and different sounds. But I like to put the music in, which you'll hear in a second. Sorry about that. So that's the music we're going to use for Steve's epic bass video. So as we go forward with this short editing part, I have the main video. I now have music. I have a title, and I have our sponsor, which is going to be St. Croix. Okay. But I want this video clip to not just start with the water. I want it to enter in a certain way. So I'm going to highlight that video clip. I double click on that clip. I'm going to transition in. I'm going to put a transition on the way into the file. So when the file starts, there's all these standard ones. If you click that, they got all this stuff. There's two-dimensional, there's artistic. I like these down here. These are like add-ons that you get when you purchase the program. These are some of the coolest ones. And obviously if you look through here, there's all these different transitions. So Steve's kind of radioactive. We'll use that one. So as the file begins, you're going to see that radioactive portion occur. Hopefully, we got a red death on our screen right now, so hopefully it'll work. Not sure why that didn't render, but I'm going to increase the length of that transition so that it comes right to when our title slide is there. So you take that, start the file, it comes in. It's a little bit choppy because it hasn't completely rendered. So you heard Steve moving the camera around right there. You can see the actual on this line here. What we can do by clicking this little bad boy, volume keyframing, I can make all that noise go away by taking the volume of that part of it to 0. So now all we're going to hear is the audio I put in. All right. So then we have, if you trust me here, we're going to go through the video clip kind of fast. Just click through here. We got a lot of nothing. Nothing happens until, actually, I think the bass swims through here somewhere. So we'll watch the film here and we'll find the part that we want to keep. Oh, there's the bass, right? So we see him come in right there. So let's just say from here back to here is all extra video that we don't want. So again, I highlighted that clip. I'm going to cut it. I'm going to go back to here-ish. I'm going to cut it again. And then I'm going to adjust this clip right here. This will all mesh perfectly. But I'm going to adjust this clip so that it speeds that up and cuts it by about half. So again, when you want to deal with anything, I right-click there. I can go to speed. I can add some speed. I'm going to use this feature called stretch, and I'm sorry I'm going fast because this could be a whole week-long course. And then I'm going to add smooth motion. And this is where your frame rate comes into particular importance. If your frame rate is too slow, this is going to get choppy. So I got smooth motion. I'm going to stretch that thing, but in terms of this one, I want it to go faster. So I actually stretch it in reverse. So I made it actually go faster. So I'm going to close this gap. I'm going to close this gap. And then once this renders, I'll show you how this file will change. So I just put speed on that thing. It's going to put it into fast motion. So I start our video. I guess I could have went back a little bit further. So this is all in faster motion. You can't tell because nothing's happening. Now it's in regular motion. You can see the bubbles slow down. Here comes our bass. All right, so now the bass swam through. I want to zoom in on that bass. So I'm going to take that and make another short clip. Go back to my 2D editor. I can put, and then I use this thing called Keyframes. And so as I move my cursor along here and the video screen goes, I'm going to get to where that bass comes. Now we can see the bass in the middle. And I want to put that bass into a higher magnification. So I hit this little Keyframes button. It puts a marker onto my video. Now I can go to size. I'm going to go 175. But now we see that the bass is in the lower right-hand corner. But what if I want that bass in the middle of the screen? I could take my position cursor and I get it to go. I can put it in the approximately in the middle of the screen by changing these values. You see the black mark at the bottom? That means I went too far for the zoom that we used. So obviously you just account for that. Now we got the bass in the middle. And then it's going to swim to the left. And I can move that focus point as well by putting in another keyframe. See if I can get this to go here. Too much. It's kind of trial and error here. You can use that slider, but the slider is really touchy. And then at the end of our clip, I want it to go back to normal. And you'll see the effect that's going to go back in here in a second. So I'm going to just take this at this keyframe and put it back almost to 0. This is a little trick. If you put it all the way back to 0, sometimes it will change the entire clip. So I'm putting it as close to normal as I can. Click on OK. And then once that renders, I'm going to go to full screen here so I can show you exactly what that does. So here's the video clip that we just changed. You'll watch the camera zoom in. Where's my bass? There he is. This is on a stationary camera, so you can make a stationary camera look like it's moving. So essentially, all of this is tricks and tips that I learned just throwing video in here and doing a number of different tutorials on YouTube. I could do all kinds of other stuff if you guys would like, although I think that this is probably plenty. So perhaps we can just talk about one other item before we open it up for questions. So I'm just going to jump out of my editing program. Now, when you're editing video, those programs that you purchase, they do come with a lot of cool features. They come with sound effects. They come with, you know, you have to bring the images, right? You have to bring the video and you have to bring the pictures. But some sound effects they won't have. For example, I wanted to have on one of my videos a train horn. Like if you picture one coming towards you, how the horn, you hear it in the distance and then it gets louder and louder and louder. Well, the program that I had did not have anything close to that. So I went to this really cool website I found called Free Sound. This is a free sound website. You can type in, you can search whatever sound you want in this search box and find it. So if you want to do a EKG, heartbeat, you can just search in there, and then it's going to search for those items, and it gives you the actual sound, which doesn't want to play right now. Yeah, there it is. But you can get all these different sounds for free at this freesound.org. The other really cool free website that I would suggest you look at, and maybe not even for this portion, but it's remove.bg. It's a remove background website. And so what it does is it takes a picture that you have. So say you have the outline of Wisconsin, and it's all got on a black background, and the outline is white, and you want just the outline in white. You can upload that to this site. It will remove the black and just give you the foreground picture. It's a free website. You can just throw an image in there. Let's see if I can find one. Let's just try this one. I don't know if this one's going to work, but we'll try it. Throw the image in there. It gives you the background. It takes all the background out. This is your normal image. This is the background. You can save that image as right back to whatever file you want. This defaulted back here. But it gives you just this portion, the hand and the bait, that you can stick into a video. So it's a really cool website. You can use it for all kinds of stuff. I would suggest you look at it. It's all free. If you do it the way I showed you, they won't give you any hard time. There's a download button right here. It only lets you download a certain number. After that, it tells you got to leave and then come back or log in. So I did all this without logging in. Let's see if we can go back, and we'll try to answer some questions. Now I'm not stuck on this small view. I don't know how to do this. Oh, there we go.
What do you want to show here?
I want to see everybody.
Okay, then you just stop sharing your screen, and it'll pop back with everybody's videos.
Let's see if I can do that. Oh,
I
yeah,
can do it
stop
for you
sharing
too
right
if you
there.
want.
Yeah. So hopefully that made some sense to you guys, and it wasn't horrible. I'll do my best to answer some questions if you got them. Silence. Everybody's sleeping.
It's cool. I've always wondered, even for just presentations, would be useful.
Yeah, and you can change with these programs. When you get done with your movie, you export these as a number of different files. You can make them high definition, 1080p. You can make them 4K. You can make them really small so that you could send them on a phone if you wanted to. You can make DVDs. You can change the size of the file so they can use it for anything. You can embed them in your PowerPoints, you know, all those applications.
So now we just got to go out and do something worth putting on video, huh?
Well, the first step really is to just go and run the camera all the
Yeah.
time. Like that's the thing about me. Like some of my friends don't like fishing with me because I always run my cameras. So there's a portion of the day that's dedicated to camera, operation and maintenance. But I've gotten so good at it. It usually only takes about 5 to maybe 10 minutes out of my fishing time to deal with cameras. So.
Hey, Jordan, it's Timmy.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, I had a question. You're talking about using songs and rights to songs because of copyrights and such things and royalties. Have you ever used something that you thought was okay, but then it turned out to be not? And I'm not saying that you got a cease and desist order or anything like that, but have you ever ended up in kind of a crummy position or where you had to remove something or?
Well, I guess the experience that I've had with that is I've tried to be really sneaky about it. See, I looked into it before I even started. There's a couple local bands that I know that don't copyright their music, so I know a couple of them. So I called one of the guys. I said, "Can I use your music?" He's like, "Yeah, use it whenever you want." But there's only so much of that you can use. If it's not copywritten, you can't really get in trouble for it. But if it is, I mean, there is a possibility that you could get into legal trouble for it. So I've tried to be slick and use just little snippets of songs. Hell's Bells, use the bell at the beginning. YouTube is so tuned into that, you get a copyright warning right away. And I haven't had any repercussions from it, but it does make you feel a little uneasy, right? You got a YouTube channel out there with they flag it right away. It says copyright infringement. And so, I guess it's probably not a good practice, but I've never been spanked for it.
That's good to know.